que los latinos anden despertando. Abre los ojos para ver lo que está pasando.
Put up your manos, members of Tanto Unidos, Chicanos, Latinos en los Estados Unidos. Don't care if you're Ricans or even Cubanos. Look at our coaches. We have more coming, don't let them divide. These suckers are vultures. If we standing together, I better be standing aside. That was the time to know about you, but I'm gonna ride. You're bad. Where would I go? This country, they try to be living the American dream. Throw it away, they promise you money and got your raging for the machine. Taking new teeth, listen to Lism. That is the system that you want to bring. You need to think. We gotta fight communism, cause it looks like we're on the brink. Connect to the links, so one way system is gonna one way listen, these people are evil that want you to sequence. So what is your plan? Hand in hand, we're standing together, cause it's our never to do what you can. Please understand, we gotta do better, so walkers remember that we took a stand. Escúchame, 24 es el año, si se puede. Lucha, lucha por la libertad.
Hey everybody, how's it going? Welcome back, Latino Free Minds, episode number 37. Daniel here with Peter Hernandez, congressional candidate for California, District 18. How you doing, Peter?
Hey, Daniel. Good to see you guys again. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. How you guys have 37 episodes, you said?
Yeah, I was looking at some, it was like a, what do you call it? Like a video, right? About podcasts and why they don't succeed and stuff like that. And I was seeing that a lot of them don't make it past 10 episodes.
Wow.
I was like, oh, how did you even, it's a low number, but I guess, yeah, people start and a lot of them don't make it to 10. So we're at 37, we'll see how far we get. But like we said before, we don't plan on stopping. So we're here.
Amen. I think you have a niche. I think there's a Latino community, especially, that's really interested in the truth. I mean, all backgrounds, right, are interested in the, but you're carving out a niche, which I appreciate.
Yeah. We're just trying to, obviously it's Latino Free Minds and I think Latinos educating against deception is, what I kind of go with. But, really it's for everybody. It's just we're trying to help people be more informed because, one of the things that I've said it before and I usually say it in Spanish is cuando controlan tus emociones, controlan tus decisiones.
That's right.
And that's what they want. And that's what they want to do, right? They want to have people emotional. And when you're emotional, you're not thinking things through, right? You're kind of just reacting. And that's how they want us. They want us reacting to things and then just kind of, they get people that way.
I love that. That's so, there's wisdom in what you're sharing, Danny. I appreciate that. Because, I've learned in politics, right? Serving as a local guy, local elected. There's always emotion up and down, different things happening, right? You're dealing with different issues, but you always have to focus on what's, basically the facts and the best when it comes to the people which you're supposed to represent, right?
Right.
So your goal is to take that information to the benefit of your constituency. Emotion throws out that's what makes us a representative government, a civil society. The emotion part is what tribal societies are made out of, what communist socialist societies are made out of. And and I know that our traditional values as Latinos don't support that. We want a healthy, stable society, right? We believe in preserving our faith, our family, our individuality is what I always say. So good stuff.
Yeah, no, for sure, right? And then the more informed people are, hopefully the better decisions they make, right? And at the end of the day, it's like wherever you land after you've gone through your little journey, as far as you've taken in data and you've processed it, and if you land on this side or this side, it's like it is what it is, right? I think what's important is that people actually take the time to look into what's being fed to them and not just take it and run with it.
That's right. Yeah. As a Christian guy, I've learned that I have to lean on what's stable and foundational, what's principled, right? Because that thing never changes. If you think about our nation, the way it was established, it was profound that it was made sure that there was fundamental principles. I think it was George Madison that talks about that to preserve liberty, we have to go back to a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles. Why? Because they don't change, and it doesn't matter the times or the seasons. They're actually meant to stand the test of the seasons or the times. It doesn't matter whether it's 200 years ago or today. They still apply the same way because we're still human. We're still fallible. We make mistakes, but there's certain things that are transcendent, that are basically eternal, and that's what the founders relied upon. They knew that things were going to change in society, but they also knew that in order for us to be a successful nation, we needed to be on a firm foundation that never changed. And that ability.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny because like the last episode that we had, we were talking about faith and how Danny had looked something up and he had seen that a lot of, Hispanic Latinos are basically, losing their faith. They're not as religious as they were before. And, one of the things that during that conversation that we had, we said that it's important to have your faith, right? Because basically what you just said right now, it's set in stone. Like it doesn't change. The word of God is the word of God.
That's right.
But the people, the society, the movements, whatever is going on, in our world today, that changes.
That's right. Yeah, the fads of the day, the current cultural sentiment, for a brief moment, like defund the police was popular, which I saw that as being, there's no way that's going to stand. And sure enough, you see the laws change, and now they're going back to trying to reestablish a stronger public safety sentiment. We still haven't caught up in California. We're definitely behind the 8 ball. But so it just use that as an example. But your faith is there's no other foundation besides that was already laid, right? And that foundation, and my faith says that foundation is Christ. He is the chief cornerstone. And if you think about our country, the way that it was established under the rule of law, under the idea that there's separation of powers, there's due process, there's innocent before proven guilty. Those fundamental principles that are the foundation of our country are also very biblical, and they're by default they're transcendent, they're eternal. And I was just reading right now a book about the idea of the consent of the governed. No other nation was formed under that idea that government only existed with the power that was granted to it by the people themselves. Consent to the governed. In the moment, and it's funny because I love, it's Dr. Larry Arndt, Hillsdale College. One of the things he references is that the reality is that that our Declaration of Independence, the way that it was framed, it was literally in times of trouble. It was in times of turmoil. And so their idea, they've already leaned into the mistakes of the past, and they've learned from it. And then they wanted to make sure that they didn't want to repeat those mistakes. So when they declared independence, they actually had 38 grievances. They said, look, these are the 38 issues that we had with our mother country, with the king. The certain things that he did that were abuses, right? He would deprive the people of meetings, and he would put them in distant places where there was no public records. Anyways, to the point, he ultimately, the complaints that were made against the mother country and the king, they solved them in the Constitution. That's why in the Constitution, it has the breakdown of the articles, the amendments that actually preserve individual freedoms. Those very remedies were in the Constitution, that the Declaration of Independence, the grievances that came from that declaration. It's pretty profound.
Yeah. No, and that's why, I think I made the video about why I think faith is important, because what we see kind of, how you said that defund the police, and if you see things nowadays, like you see a lot of people basically running wild, right?
Yes.
You see big groups of people running into stores, looting and all that stuff. And, I think that's part of the problem too. People not staying close to God.
That's right.
They lose that connection. So, you lose that connection to God, or you're not raised with it, then one of the positives that I would say that, benefit a person from having faith and growing up and having a relationship with God is that it gives you morals, right? It gives you a better purpose. You're doing what you can to be a a good person as much as possible, right? We're all flawed. We're all going to fail. But for the most part, you're not doing things that are going to, you know, where you're hurting other people or you're taking advantage of people and none of that. So, you know, I think that's why, in a sense, you know, a lot of people do have to kind of, you know, come back to God.
That's right. Yeah.
The country's gotten too far away from God
100%.
for sure.
Yeah. I think it was Alexander Solzhenitsyn who basically says that we have killed God, and we've removed him from our consciousness. And basically, it's made it a dangerous sentiment because now you default to become a tribal system where it's all about you, right? It's whatever you can get out of life, which means you know what, if it's all about you, then you're going to do what you can to protect yourself, and that makes it where it's, you know, it's you start having an excuse why it's okay to take from others instead of producing, and you create a grievance culture, right? Because there's no peace when you're doing things to hurt other people. You might think you can justify it, and John Locke, actually, who Thomas Jefferson gives credit for, that inspired him, one of the authors for writing the Declaration of Independence, John Locke, he basically said that in one of his books called The Two Treatises of Government, he actually mentions of this, that it's the law of the tiger and the shark, that if you don't prescribe to a moral conscience, right, to a eternal perspective, then you will default to the law of the tiger and the shark, where it's basically eat or be eaten, right? Consume, you know, it's kill or be killed. Yeah. It's a dangerous society because, again, tribalism means all that matters is your group, which is funny how you kind of start to see the connecting sentiments between the left and this tribal sentiment, where on the left, it's all about your group, right? It's all about your identity, right? The identity politics, like you become part of a group. That's the value of who you are. So you have to protect your group, and it's no longer protection of the individual. That's why they don't care about the Declaration of Independence or the individual rights in the Bill of Rights. All that is very, very dangerous, because the opposite sentiment says to care for your neighbor, to preserve societies, you need consent to the governed. That means you have to dialogue the issues, figure out what the consensus is, and then ultimately come up with the best solution. And the representative that you elect is ultimately going to articulate those solutions in their policies to preserve the interest of the will of the majority, right? The actual voters that voted that person in. So it's very, very profound, and I know we could talk about this forever, but I see Danny's on now.
Yeah, Danny? You made it. All right. And so, are you on mute? Try it again. Yeah, I can't hear you. Nah. We'll see right now. The microphone probably, but yeah, Danny made it from work. You know, like we said before, it's like we have full-time jobs, so sometimes it gets tough. I know you run your business, and you know you're running for Congress at the same time, so I can imagine how tough that is.
I have like my Bluetooth headphones on, and I'm listening to whether it's a podcast like yours, or I'm listening to educational things that encourage me and motivate me and help me to understand better the issues. But and then I'm running my business at the same time. So yeah, I get pretty busy, but I love what I do. I love my business, and I love the idea of representation, which is why I'm passionate about it.
You're still muted. Is your mic plugged in all the way?
Okay, how about now?
Yeah, there you go.
It was just a little bit out.
Yeah, just a tiny bit.
No, I just there's so many buttons for a damn microphone. I didn't know which one to hit. But we got to figure it out. Sorry about that. But yeah, I was a little tied up at work. But yeah, we got to multitask and juggle all kinds of different tasks to get it done. But like Daniel said, I can only imagine what you have to deal with.
It's busy. It's definitely busy. But really, I think the strength that I have is the support that I have, which is basically my wife. My wife is a big part of what stabilizes our home. She cares for our kids. She educates them. She's actually a homeschool mom, and she also runs. She has a full-time job aside from helping me with the business and a lot of the acquisition of leads for our business. So long and short, yeah, it's my wife is a big, huge support system by God's grace.
That's good, man. That's
You know,
awesome.
it's funny that you were saying that because on my I was driving back from Turlock and a teammate called me. No, he texted me. He's like, "Hey, can you talk?" So I just called him right off the bat. And you know, he doesn't just talk to talk. You know, I knew that it was pretty important. So he's making a big decision in his life. You know, whether he should stay with our company or go to a different one. And he has the confidence to talk to me about it. And he goes, I really don't have anybody to talk about it. I saw my wife, you know, she's like you said, she's my rock. She gives him a lot of support and like good advice. And he was kind of telling me, and I'm like, wow, man, you're lucky. She tells you what you need to hear. You know, a lot of the times, you know, our supporters don't tell us exactly what we need to hear, whether it's good, bad, or ugly.
Mhm.
But you know, I was like, I congratulated him. I said, man, you're a lucky man. You know, you have someone by your side that's telling you exactly what you need to hear, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
But you know, that's important in life. So congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that. Yeah.
Praise God.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, since the last time we had you on, we had Speaker McCarthy, and now we don't.
Yep.
So, what are your thoughts on that? On how that all played out?
I saw that coming, guys. I saw that coming. You know, when you live on shaky ground, and I understand in politics, there's always this jockeying for votes. You have to, right? Technically speaking, you're at the will of the success that you create for your district. Technically, it's supposed to be. When you're Speaker of the House, it's more than just your district, right? Because you're lobbying for votes all through the whole 455 House of Representatives. That's a lot of people that you got to figure out how to get the majority, which is the 218 vote that you need to get anything to pass the House of Representatives and go to the Senate and eventually get adopted by the president. And there's a lot of ways to stop anything from moving forward. So you need momentum. The Republicans are in a conundrum. I would argue more so than the Democrats. The Democrats are imploding on their own because of their dumb decisions, right? There's so many things that they're doing wrong. We could probably talk for 2 hours about all the things that they're doing to destroy our economy, our energy independence, to destroy our sovereignty at the border. So many bad things that are happening. So they're kind of already hurting themselves. But us, we don't know what it means to unify. We have a House Freedom Caucus, which I agree with, that they just want some back to brass tacks, solid solutions that make representation very, very tangible to your district, where you're, you know, like one of the things that Matt Gaetz constantly repeated was he wants single item budget bills, right? Who could disagree with that? If you have a budget bill that's just one item, then you can make it very easy. Yes, I agree, or no, I don't agree. A lot of the times is they commingle, which is what the issue was with they call them omnibus bills. They commingle all of these different funds and say, hey, in order for you to get your money for your district, you got to support wokeness in the military, or you got to support funding for Ukraine, right? It's all in one package. Say yes or say no. And if you say no, by the way, we're going to blast you publicly and say you're the bad guy because now you don't agree with me for your own district or whatever, right? We're going to frame you as the bad guy. That's divisive. I mean, that's how do you work with someone who's basically kind of like leveraging just ultimately they want to win and they need you to agree with their win in order for you to get some sort of for your district. And, you know, I knew that as Republicans we're too principled. I mean, and I shouldn't say that. We are principled, and because of that, you can't deny where we came from. When you have, you know, basically you have omnibus bill supported by the Speaker of the House, when you have, you know, ultimately before this, you didn't have a motion to vacate. Now you do. But there's, you know, they needed to have a term limits as another thing that they've been pushing for because all these folks are accruing too much power. So there's all these disagreements. The House Freedom Caucus is at a place where they're just saying, you know what, we're done. We're not doing this anymore. Like the $2 trillion in debt that they've basically accrued, you know, and this is $2 trillion beyond our economy's capacity to pay for. Basically, that's like whatever your income is, you're paying more in debt and expenses than you are taking in. It's just not solvent. So they see the writing on the wall, and all they kept hearing from the other side, right, from the which sounds to be like the majority of the Republicans still on that side, is they're mad at them because they're the Freedom Caucus is holding their feet to the fire and saying, we're not going to go down this road anymore. We see a train wreck coming, and you guys are ignoring this train wreck with the debt, right? And we're weak to other countries. Like now we're dealing with, which I know we'll eventually talk about, with the issue with Hamas and as a terrorist organization that attacked Israel. There's so many things happening, and the funding is the problem, is the biggest problem, really, because bad ideas are basically, it's easy to spend on bad ideas. It's harder to be very prioritized with a tight budget where you're actually saying we're only going to fund certain things and we're going to put things first, like the border. I mean, that was one of the requirements from the House Freedom Caucus also. Hey, we're gonna make sure that we address this border issue. It's like we can't have this anymore. 1.5 million or so illegals crossing the border. It was the Latino community, saying, hey, we're trying to encourage more Mexicanos to come over and basically work over here. That used to be the argument, but to be honest, it's 20% now of that population that's illegal that's coming across. 80% of that population is from every other country. So there's too much madness happening. You finally had a select few of Congress people, which I applaud. They're standing, yeah, we can't go down this road anymore. Something has to change because we're bottoming out. This thing is just going to collapse on its own, and I don't want my name tied to this. I don't think this is right. We're hurting our country. We're no longer valuable anymore. We're losing we're losing the de-dollarization, right? The BRICS system is officially being established, where now you have Britain, Russia, India, China, South Africa, that are now officially unifying under a gold standard. So we have basically a currency that's inflated, that's about to collapse on its own, and now you have countries basically bowing out of the dollar, or trying to at least establish something like that. So too many bad things are happening, and I think Republicans are really starting to see that they can't keep going down this road. And you basically had our House Speaker who just wants to work with the Democrats and ultimately allow them to take charge of our decision making, because that's really what's happening, right? It's funny how they're blaming the House Freedom Caucus for working with the Democrats and getting them out. The reality is that never would have happened if Kevin McCarthy would have fallen through, basically followed through with what he said. If he would have honored what he said, there was an original agreement, he committed to those things. I mean, maybe that's where I should have led with. How do you work with somebody who's technically on your team and they're telling you basically, hey, well, I'm going to do this. They don't follow through, and they lie to you basically. How do you work with somebody?
Well, I think that's what has been established in I don't know how many decades already. They tell us one thing and they don't follow through. That's so it's right. Kind of, we've talked about it in the past, is that why do we keep allowing this to happen?
Yeah.
They campaign on certain things and they never come through.
Yeah.
And I guess to answer your question is that because it's been happening for so long that people are just, hey, it's politicians just talking, nothing's going to happen. And that's one question I was going to ask you is, I know that the Republicans, put a lot of pressure on themselves making this move. But what do you think gave them the backbone to do this? I know that McCarthy agreed that if he didn't follow through, it would just take one person, to kind of spearhead this, right, and get them out. So my question is, what gave them the backbone to actually do that? They never had it before.
I think there's been a long, slow but sure solidifying of restoring that sentiment of and I think it was the Donald Trump effect, to be honest with you. I mean, so there's a couple things, because when I think about the 8, and I can't name them all, but I know Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Eli Crane,
Andy Biggs,
Andy Biggs, all these folks that I can think of, they're very fundamental. They're very principled people. They're like, there's certain things that I'm not going to budge on. And but I think this has been a building of also confidence because they see the Donald Trump effect. It's funny because you have a guy who was an outsider, a business guy, saying, look, I'm not in it for myself. I'm in it for my country. And he was the one guy that when he actually got in, he followed through with what he said. He did not and you can blame him all you want. You can hate how he talks, and I think that was the wisdom of Donald Trump, is that a lot of the times he would kind of like drop these vocal bombs and walk away and basically allow these folks to get all riled up over a mean tweet. And then he would basically focus on actually getting things done, right? So he would allow the media to attack him on these mean tweets while he's focusing on making sure he's securing the interest of our country. So anyways, so bottom line is the Donald Trump effect is he delivers. He's the guy that delivers. And it's funny because I just came, so 3 weeks ago, I went to the Santa Cruz County Fair. I was there basically introducing myself to voters, right? To the whole folks that are attending. It's part of my district. And they had this a bean poll. So basically a bean poll was, you have a little picture of a candidate on a little jar, and then it had their name underneath, and a big jar of jelly beans, and so it had all the primary candidates, and people would just the people that were manning the booth basically said, hey, grab a bean, throw it in a jar, tell us who you want, who you think is going to be the best candidate for president, right? And they were their only Republicans, obviously. So the Republican field is packed, right? We have a lot of candidates. Sure enough, you had all these people coming up, and this is in Watsonville, Santa Cruz County, majority Latino area, so it's high 65%. I think it is Latino voters or people. I think 47% overall. Long and short, you had crowds of people, and as they came up, they dropped the beans, and the one that was full was the Donald Trump jar. I was blown away. And I would see groups of kids, like Gen Zers, roughly 18 and up. They would some of them, it's funny because I was paying attention. They were giggling, and they would grab a bean and they would throw it, or joking around, right? And they would grab a bean and they would throw it in the jar. And I went up to one of them and I said, were you being serious? I said, can you be honest with me? Can I ask you an honest question? Like, did you really believe in what you just did? Like, why would you support Donald Trump? And I did it honestly like this without me giving my bias. And they said, to be honest with you, he's the only one that we can see get it done. Like, he's the only one that we think will get it done. And he's gotten more popular the more they've attacked him. So there is almost like this intrigue of who is this guy, Donald Trump? And the more people pay attention to him, and especially when he gets attacked, he becomes now the official, James Dean, rebel without a cause. Like, he's our guy, right? Like the Robin Hood, the guy that's like the establishment doesn't like, the system doesn't like, and him and his merry men, right, all of a sudden are in there to rob the rich and give to the poor or whatever. But somehow that sentiment is literally a growing sentiment that I just keep seeing. And so I think between those two things is why those guys had the courage to do it. It's funny because if you think about it, and I'm curious how this is going to play out. I mean, Danny R just said that it looks like Jim Jordan might be the guy. I was hoping that they would actually have a vote on Donald Trump being the speaker, only because I want to see which Republicans are going to vote against him. That would have definitely a political impact in each congressional district. It'd be a curious turnout with that for these races.
I could see it happening too, because he is strategic that way. He'll throw things out just to see who is backing him and who isn't backing him.
Yeah.
Yep. So it's going to be a boomerang, when he's back in, well, God willing, back in, he's going to be able to do what he needs to do. But, and this is the point that I was getting at, is that, with that Donald Trump effect, what I'll offer is, with everything that's happening right now, and all of, even some of these are fake polls, but some of the fake polls are even showing Trump in the lead in not supporting some of these woke agendas. I was kind of joking around, but not joking around with Daniel, that even in Beverly Hills, they're protesting. They're protesting wokeism and LGBTQ in
Yep.
schools. So if they're protesting out there in Beverly Hills, in LA, there's a shift going on.
There is. And
So I think that. Oh wait, I gotta close the door right here.
Here's some because Danny had mentioned it right now, and I had this this poll that I had seen, right, where it's basically based on issues. So you can see Trump's leading on a lot of issues that really affect people day to day, right? And then the only the only ones that are Biden is leading is really like, climate change, made up.
yeah,
Like abortion, like that's not, it's, I don't think that's, in my opinion, it's probably not the main issue for people, but all these things like the economy, border security, inflation, I think all those things right now, not to say that abortion is not important, but I'm saying like right now, what people are feeling is definitely this. And you can see that, Trump's got a big lead on
yeah.
every issue, almost every important issue to people.
That's right. Yeah, it's a good point, Danny, because and I've noticed this. I've shared with other folks. My brothers, my cousins come up to me, hardcore Democrats, coming up to me saying, "I gotta vote Republican this year. Like, I don't have a choice." Literally, they're telling me this. Like, I'm done. Like, the Democrat Party left us. We can't vote this way anymore because everything. It's funny how, like, the social issues and stuff become a big deal, especially the Democrats, when things are good, when things are stable, right? It's like, yeah, that's the most important thing. But when the ground's shaking under your feet, you're losing your house, your income dropped by 30%, your cost of living, the price of everything went up 30 to 40%. When you don't feel safe in your neighborhood, you live in San Francisco and very liberal city, and everybody is literally panicked about the amount of crime that's happening over there. The fact that there's less officers on the streets because no one wants to sign up for a job where, like my opponent Zoe Lofgren agreed with the George Floyd Injustice Act, which takes away qualified immunity from officers, which all it is basically a technical term for they get legal protections when they enforce the law. If there's ever some kind of a grievance filed against them, the process plays out to protect them. As long as they did the right thing, they're fine. Those things are now destabilizing elements. So the moment we're destabilizing society, all bets are off. At that point, it's like, shoot, I can't keep voting this way because my life is falling apart. I don't know anybody who's going to be self-sacrificial and say, oh, well, this is okay, that I'm losing my house as long as I can protect my right to an abortion. Like, I don't see that happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't see how that's going to make sense to anybody. Because that in and of itself is an evolving topic. At the end of the day, Roe versus Wade, people don't even realize, they're barely starting to realize that decision. All it did was hand power back to the states. It literally gives them the right. You can be an ultra abortion state if you want to. It's just the people engaging, voting in their conscience. Before you know it, that's the policies that come from the electeds that they want. Yeah. Regardless, I just use that as an example. A big part of it is kind of your whole message of who you are. It's freeing your mind to truly understanding the truth and not be stuck to a party per se. Because I'm a Republican, but only because of my values, not because of the party. Right. So it gives you the freedom to intellectually understand and make decisions, and ultimately, by default, have a healthy decision-making process, which is what we want for everybody.
Yeah, and that's kind of the point that I wanted to make, is that now that this is happening, right? So we talked about the Trump movement and people actually seeing what's going on right now and realizing it. And to your point, the real issues are being focused on now. It's not where everything is good. And, we care about these woke agendas, and that's what's important. Forget the woke agendas at this point. That's what people are saying. It's like, let's fix what we need to fix right now, because the ship is going down.
That's right.
So now they're making the real educated decisions. They're really paying attention right now. And I think I guess what I'm trying to say is Congress can feel that, and they got that backbone because of the people.
Yeah.
And I don't know what we would want to call Trump if he's the one that light or is fueling the fire. I don't know how what metaphor we want to use here, but it's because of the people. I think that they finally got the backbone to do something like that.
Yeah, it's the populist sentiment, So if you think about the original, well, at least modern day populist president is Ronald Reagan. I'm a big fan of his, and I've listened to a ton of his speeches. And there's something that really resonates, because one thing that's very clear with what he says is he has a lot of confidence in the people. He has a, and it's funny because people, I think a lot of electeds even confuse that. It doesn't mean that you're listening to the woke agenda. It doesn't mean that you're listening to things that don't make sense. It means you're gauging the sentiment of the public. Where's the pain points? Almost like a physician, you're trying to see where people are struggling, and you're saying, okay, I'm going to figure out how to solve that issue, right? I'm going to target that issue. Oh, and by the way, I want you to understand the issue just the same, because the populist president will say, I have faith in you. You can understand. You have the capacity to understand. It's just our job to educate you. And it's funny because I say that with a lot of passion in myself, guys, because as I've, prayed and ran for office, serving 4 years at the local, or 8 years really, 4 at the school board, 4 at the board of supervisors. One thing that I've really seen that's really evolved in this whole process is there are people in administrative authority and administrative positions, like a public health officer. I remember our superintendent was a PhD. He was a psychologist background, education background, like very, very smart professional people, but almost their credentials gave them the authority to say, because they're the smart person in the room, you just need to shut up and listen to what they say and do what they say. And I'm like, wait, I thought I was the elected. Who gave you the authority to make decisions over me when I was elected to represent the people? Somehow you're trying to sidestep me. And think about it. I mean, that has been the growing issue in our federal government, has been the administrative state. They call it the fourth branch of government. It's kind of, like eerily saying that, because you have agencies that are abusing their power. I mean, look at what OSHA did by trying to attach this new way of gauging workplace safety, right? OSHA basically has to do with workplace compliance, public safety, or employee safety. Under OSHA, basically they were saying, like, now you have to address a virus, you employer. Well, and by the way, the insurance companies now are going to require that you have, and even your payroll processing are going to require that you have COVID pay, right? Sick pay. Oh, and by the way, if they sniffle just as much as sniffle, you got to pay them that COVID pay and they can go home. Like all of a sudden they just added these things of just kind of beyond the ability to manage. They really should have been through the regulatory process, which is the legislative branch. They went through an administrative process. So I can go on and on, but bottom line is there's abuse. It's these elites who think that they're too smart, this intellectual elite that thinks that they're, just because they have a credential and you don't, all of a sudden you're not smart enough to understand. And that's why the populist sentiment is so popular. This like, who can represent me? Who can actually show that they care about me, the average voter? I just want to be able to pay for my gas. Tell me what that means. What is the process that you guys are doing this that's taking power away from me? Because now you're increasing my cost and you're getting our country into debt, and I'm having to pay for it. And my children and my children's children are going to pay for it. That's why these things are growing, because of that growing angst of just ultimately representation. So when I go out there and speak, I speak passionately about representation, and people get it. They connect with it right away, and they're like, yeah, that's what I want. That's exactly what you just said. That's what I want. I might not understand it all, but I'm starting to get it. And I think what you just said makes sense. And I want to learn more. The cool thing is folks end up, when they hear someone speak genuinely about representation, all of a sudden they want to know more, which it should, right? Thomas Jefferson talks about informing discretion by education. That's the true corrective uses of constitutional power. Give the power back to the people, literally.
And right now, what you said about education, if you think about it, we are getting an education, or the people are getting an education, because let's take, for example, COVID, right? Um, they implemented mandates, right? Everybody started learning that, they weren't legal, right? There's a lot of, court rulings that are coming out, and, it's not constitutional. So now we're learning what's constitutional, what's not constitutional,
That's right.
and what the different branches are supposed to do.
That's right.
Voting, the changes in voting, they weren't by the legislatures,
That's right.
the mayors and stuff like. So we are getting an education,
That's right.
and I think it's part of that Trump effect. I don't want to give Trump all of the credit, but like you said, he'll throw word bombs out there, and he'll just, trigger people, and they'll just start talking about it. And we're getting an education on the judicial system.
That's right.
It's, they're attacking him. The Bidens, there's a bunch of stuff coming out. It's a two-tiered system. We're getting an education.
That's right.
And people are seeing it.
That's right.
So it's funny that you said that, because I've been thinking about that, and it's like we're all getting a really good education in the past 4 years here of what's really going on. The main thing is that we can't forget is that things are going to get better again. And you know how that saying goes is good times create weak men.
That's right.
So, we can't forget. We got to keep it in the forefront.
That's right.
So hopefully, good things happen right now, and we don't forget. And but I just wanted to make that point, because you triggered that thought about education right now.
Yeah, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, right? We got to be paying attention. And I've learned as an elected representative that the power, the things that embolden me and give me that sense of purpose and encouragement, one is God, but two is the people understanding. Like, I want them to understand, because that creates a force of support that will, as long as you're being honest and you're intentional about making sure that you're engaging your rep, ultimately your voters, they're gonna love you for it. They're gonna want to support you. They're gonna want to do what they can to spread the word. The truth has a way of not returning void, the scriptures say. So there's truth becomes so dominant in a conversation that that it has to be, to a certain extent, for those who are malintent, it has to be hidden by a multitude of lies, right? People need to be able to hide it under a bushel and not allow you to see it, because when the truth gets let out, all of a sudden, I mean, like you just said, with now we're seeing what was it? I think it was the OSHA director was all of a sudden getting grilled by the House of Representatives, and he was like, no, it actually wasn't a mandate. We weren't doing a mandate. It wasn't an actual mandate, and they were grilling them, and it's like, yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was.
I lived it as a county supervisor. I 100% know it was. There's plenty of, I mean, these folks are going to have to scatter, because the reality is the sunlight, it's like cockroaches scatter in the sunlight. It's the same thing. All of a sudden you're seeing these guys retreat, because they're realizing, shoot, there's tons of history that's showing what we did. Now, now there's no turning back. I mean, I argued this from the beginning when the mandates happened, when they were requiring it. I brought forward an informed consent resolution. I thought about it. I really did. And I prayed. I was like, if we mandate this, and I play devil's advocate, who's going to own the consequences if we were wrong? And technically speaking, under the EUA, we're supposed to do two things: inform the person taking an experimental product, vaccine or mask for that matter, and they're supposed to have the right to say no. That's under the EUA law. Anything experimental, you could not force it upon anybody. I argued that on the dais. They're like, well, and they danced around the issue. And they said, this is for public health. Technically, you take a vaccine, it's good for me because you're going to protect me. Like, just crazy stuff, right? And I'm like, man, you guys are gaslighting me. But on the dais, I just said, look, the reality is if we're forcing our employees to take this, if God forbid something happens to them, we have to own the consequence. I foresee us getting sued. I said, so there's no way I'm going to support this. And the reality is there will be a day of reckoning, of atonement, where we're going to have to own the consequences as things start to transpire and the truth starts to come out. I don't want to I've never been a betting man. I'm not going to do it now. So I'm not going to hedge my bets against assuming that there's not going to ever be any negative consequence. I would rather trust that the best thing to do is let you choose, you the people. And sure enough, fast forward to today, I'm, by the grace of God, I was right. You know, I was on the right side of history.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of things, you know, like we're talking about that have come out, and they're what's that episode, Daniel, that we called with
The
everything that was happening
you're
that
talking
is
about
coming, huh?
the validation.
Validation. So here comes the validation,
Yeah.
you know, and and like you said, it's not to say we were right or anything like that, but it's one of those things where we talked about common sense, you know, and following the laws that, you know, exist now and not trying to change them or circumvent them. We
That's
just
right.
have to go back to basics. Almost like I use the child mentality
Yeah.
is children are very curious by nature and they ask a lot of questions,
Mhm.
you know, and it has to make sense to them. We can't just use the excuse or, you know, the reason because I said so, because I'm your parent, because I'm superior, because I'm smarter, because I hold this title. You know, we can't accept that. We have
That's
to
right.
go back to the inner child and go, but why?
Mm-hmm.
And then they give us a dumb answer. Elaborate. Why?
That
And
doesn't
just
make
get to the root cause, the root problem, and reasons that, you know, they're doing certain things.
That's right. That's right. There's nothing more frustrating to me than the fact that I really believe there's people out there. I'm not saying everybody. That really don't have. They just they have zero confidence in the public. They really don't. They really want to be there because it's a position of power and influence, and it matters more to them that than it does to represent. I mean, if you think about it, if we actually did the right thing, what would an America look like if we actually represented, if we followed through with the constitutional authority given to us, and we actually made sure that the truth was consistent and clear, and it wasn't arbitrary, right? There wasn't contradictory elements in the law. We would become again an excellent nation, and I could see a profound prosperity, not so much just financially, stability and peace in our streets. But I mean, that's kind of what I aspired to. I just know in my heart of hearts that if we actually did as God would call us to do, honor Him and restore that sanity and the rule of law, I think our nation would we would become the apex of society again. And not even for the sake of arrogance, for the sake of prosperity. Because just the same, if you're looking at what's happening around the world, um, the moment America becomes destabilized, the rest of the world destabilizes also. We are literally the shining city on a hill, as Ronald Reagan said. And if we can
Mhm.
be that again, we become the light of influence that influences other nations to do right. I mean, you have other nations that try to duplicate American exceptionalism, and they're actually doing well, some of them. But a majority of them that don't want to, it's for obvious reasons, right? It's communism, it spreads because it's malintent. It doesn't understand what ultimately a sovereign grace that was established under our nation and how our nation prospered. You actually have to care about your neighbor in order for you to be prosperous as a nation. That's why I would argue that's why Israel, and we can kind of head to that if you want. I would argue that's why Israel is hated. I mean, it's funny how Iran calls Israel the little Satan and they call us the big Satan. Why is that? Why do they call us the big Satan? If Israel is just about some Zionism that they're saying that they don't agree with, then why are you connecting those? Maybe, just maybe, it's because Israel, as a representative democratic state, is the closest thing to something like America in the Middle East, and they hate that idea of representation because, like me and Danny were talking earlier, you either have a healthy representative government like ours, or you have a tribal system where there's only a few in power, and that they have to use force and coercion to control you. Whereas in our country, it's literally excellence, which requires debate and dialogue, which creates opportunity for solutions, ultimately success, not just in policies, but it opens the door for industries, you name it, to be successful. So anyways, I think it's not that simple when people say, well, We don't care about Israel. We shouldn't care. Technically, as a Christian, I don't have a choice. I care about Israel because God calls them His people, and it's our duty to preserve the interest of Israel. If I'm a Christian, then it's my duty to preserve the interest of it's salvation came first to the it's to the Jew, then to the Gentile. The Bible says so. We have very much an interest to preserve the interest of Israel, and it doesn't mean that they're perfect, but it just means that they are the best. That basically they are the best opportunity for freedom in a Middle East that's chaotic and tribal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not just because there's a lot of reasons why. There's the what is there to benefit from war?
Yeah.
There has to be other solutions, other ways, in order to get it done. And not to change the subject too much, but since we're on the subject about Hamas and Israel and what's happening over there in the Middle East and Iran and all the parties involved, it should kind of sheds light into our southern border. And what you were talking about is that what did you say? It's 80% of other countries come flooding in through the southern border.
Yep, 80%. I checked. Yeah, the last I checked, it was 20% were Mexicanos. The other 80% was from other countries.
So let's take a look at that dynamic. So what's happening in Israel? So they were able to go into Israel, go through their borders, and who knows who they are? Taliban is, supposedly, leading the charge over there and whatnot. So a lot of these young men that were coming up through the southern border, and who's to say where did they end up in the United States?
Yeah.
And what are their intentions? So it kind of brings to light the danger in having open borders. So
Right.
who's to say that things like that don't start to happen here in the United States?
That's right.
And it just shows the importance of having a secure border, vetting, and just being pragmatic, being smart, just using common sense when we're coming up with policies.
That's right. Well, yeah, and the idea of assimilation, right? It's been attacked by the left. Like, why should I have to assimilate, right? Can I be an independent individual? They're literally calling for a tribal system, if that's the case. I listened to a profound thinker called his name was Ravi Zacharias, God rest his soul. He used to say that some cultures love their neighbors, some cultures eat their neighbors. Which belief system are you going to fall under? And if you think about it, our very nation was intentional that it preserved the right of conscience. So this is not about forcing anybody to agree with a Christian majority or anything. But there are certain things that have to be fundamentally equal to all of us. I mean, it's funny how you even have Nancy Pelosi articulating the Declaration of Independence, but she picks it apart only to her benefit. She doesn't really honor the intentions of it, because if she did, she would honor the fact that according to our Constitution, in our Declaration, that all men are created equal. They are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights: the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent to the governed. Right? There's a lot there. Consent to the governed, equal rights under the law, equal protections under the law. She should be the first one to stand up and say, I don't care if I don't really like these January 6ers. I don't agree with them going through pretrial detention. They should not be in jail until we prove them guilty. They should have a right to a speedy and public trial, and they're officially innocent until they go through the process. The moment that they can attack someone that they don't agree with, you've officially tribalized the system and said it's less about the rule of law and it's more about who's in power and who can control who, right? That's what a tribal system is. It's who's the dominant force and who has the most weapons or whatever, the most ability to overpower the other. That's a dangerous sentiment. For the sake of preserving the interest of a liberal sentiment, if I was liberal, I would want equal protection of the law, because then there would be no excuse for someone that's conservative to go after liberal or vice versa. But that's what's happening, because we're no longer equal under the law.
Yeah. Did you want to add something, Daniel?
No, go.
Or-
Go ahead.
So, and this is something that I've, brought up in the past too, is um, I'll take it back to what was that, Proposition 8?
Hey, the marriage.
Remember? Yeah. So, and this was a while ago. Maybe some people don't remember this, but
Like 2008, I think it was.
yeah, yep. So, and this is when Twitter barely started getting popular and stuff like that,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly. But if people don't remember, Proposition 8 came out and the people weren't voting for it. It just didn't pass. It didn't pass. It didn't pass. And not just here in California, but across the nation. It wasn't happening until a judge is who made the decision. And then people were celebrating that. And I remember telling certain people, I'm like, okay, you're celebrating now, but just wait until you're voting for something that you believe in, and then it gets overturned by courts.
Yeah.
And then it's the minority then making the decision for you.
Yeah.
So it's very dangerous, that game, and it kind of falls into what you're talking about right now, tribalism.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, and yeah, I think to clarify, Prop 8 passed, but the liberal judge overturned it is what happened. Yeah, it was it was
it was the other way around.
yeah. No, but you were right on. You were 100% right on as far as what you were intending to say is, yeah, Prop 8 basically was a proposition, because a proposition itself is basically it's a citizens initiative. So the citizens bring something forward, they put it before the voters of the state, and it goes to a vote, right? And I can't remember the threshold requirements. Either way, it passed. So the public official, or the California voters in 2008 said, yes, we believe marriage is between a man and a woman. It actually defined it. And this liberal judge, a Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals judge, overturned it. One judge somehow moved the Ninth Circuit, and they voted basically to support it, to take it down, which you can argue that it was unconstitutional for them to do that. I didn't follow it after that vote. I was pretty let down that even happened. But to your point, yeah, the judge technically allowed for the court system to change the will of the voters, right? Technically, that you can argue that was unconstitutional. And I think that's why also after Roe versus Wade happened and it got struck down, they were afraid because the Supreme Court might also take down that. I'm trying to remember Dobbs. There was a decision having to do with same-sex marriage and stuff that they were afraid that they would get overturned. Yeah, so there's so much there, because technically the California GOP, although they did support, it took a lot of fight to preserve man and a woman in their platform. There's kind of this weak-kneed sentiment to get away from fundamental principles, because you basically have certain folks that say, well, the law says, so we just need to honor it, when in reality, they're getting away from the precedent of what was originally established, what the will of the voters wanted, the people. And really, there's nothing that should supersede the will of the voters. Nothing, right? That's why elections matter. But ultimately, the point is you can arbitrarily change principles. You can say that it no longer exists, but there will be a consequence to it, because now we're dealing with, it's funny, the transgender sentiment, which is technically imploding a lot of the parents' rights issues. And that's because, again, it's getting to a relative sentiment that says you can be a man and you're really a woman, or vice versa. You can go into a bathroom that's a girl, even though you're a boy. And then all of a sudden you're hearing about these cases of individuals getting raped and stuff. And then now all of a sudden we're getting mad about it, when in reality, this was a train wreck coming a long time ago.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that don't react to things, or don't like, how'd you put it, when the ground shakes under them, then they start to, well, what's going on here? And I think that speaking on tribalism, with the whole thing going on too with Israel and Hamas, it's like it kind of feels that way too, right? With everybody kind of trying to pick a side, or if you're not on this side, you're the bad person. If you're not on that side, you're the bad person. And for me, just to kind of give you guys my opinion on the whole situation, I think that, you know, what you see, what you've been, videos people have been posting and this and that. Like, obviously, it's sad to see, right? You don't want to see people be murdered, attacked, or none of that. And the only thing I will say is, whoever is doing evil, doing these evil actions and hurting innocent people, hurting kids, I think those people should be dealt with. That doesn't mean I'm saying I'm pro 100% Israel or pro 100% Palestine. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's a difference in what's going on, and I think right now a lot of people are quick to jump to one side and not know everything and not look at everything. You know what I mean? And it's kind of what we were saying earlier too. It's like a lot of people get emotional about it. They pick their side. They dig their heels in, and it is what it is, right? But there's
Well,
like in anything else, right? There's always bad people on all sides. There's always someone doing something that's not good. And again, like, the last thing you want to see is just innocent people that have nothing to do with whatever is going on being murdered. And kind of seeing all that stuff, like, I can see how you can get like angry quick. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So,
Well, everybody's getting angry post-mortem, post the
Right.
issue, post the actual situation.
mhm,
But what is more dangerous, like what's happening now, or the fact that we've allowed things to develop to be in this place to where we're at today?
mhm,
Like, if we try to bring it down to a simple level, when you have two people, right? Let's say each person, two people, one is one nation, one is the other nation, and one says, "I want peace. I'll even give you some land. I don't
Mhm.
want to fight with you. Just don't attack us, please." But the other side says, "Yeah, we'll take the land, but really, we don't want you to exist. Like, you don't have a right to exist."
mhm.
Like, there's a little bit of a difference, and that's the reality of what we're dealing with. So,
Yeah, yeah.
if there's any dying on one side, obviously, I don't want Palestinian children or women
Mhm.
I don't like it. I don't like the idea of innocent children or women dying. What could have prevented it? If maybe, just maybe, if there was a stronger stance to say there's certain things that should not be happening, that will not escalate the situation. Like, there should be a total abandonment of support for a terrorist organization that
Yeah.
uses children and women as human shields, that hides under a hospital, and that's their main military station.
Mhm.
That in where there's actual sick people in this hospital, right? So there's certain tactics that are being used to present a face of what is actually this confusing, like, why would this happen? Why would Israel do that when it's destroying lives? Really, the intention is for the public they know, because again, it's back to the sentiment of what we started with. The emotion is driving the conversation, because at that
Mhm.
point, it's creating this issue, that now you have a lot of folks that are getting really onto, like, I'm anti-Israel, I'm pro-Palestine, or I'm pro-Palestine, anti-Israel. They're doing the post-mortem stuff. Why weren't they paying attention from the beginning to say, how do we prevent this from happening? Right? Everybody, in retro, it's like hindsight is always 2020. That's where we're at today.
Right.
This should have there's certain things that should have never happened. I mean, the Israelis have always extended. It's funny because even now they're saying that there's plenty of evidence. The Israelis were basically saying, we do not want to hurt innocent women and children. Hamas, send the civilians out of this area because we are about to attack.
Mhm.
Let's make this a fair fight. And what does Hamas do? They keep them there. No, we're not going to let you leave, because we need to make sure that Israel looks like the bad guy. We
Mhm.
need to make sure. So who's, at that point, you have to ask yourself, who is the one that is wanting the conflict, and who's the one that's trying to prevent the conflict? And I think that needs to be asked. And you got to have. I mean, you can't deal with the bully by asking for a fair fight. The bully's going to want to fight with dirty rules,
Mhm.
right? They're going to try to figure out how to dirty and muck up the game so that you lose and they win. That's it.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's a great point. The other point too, Daniel kind of knows my way of thinking in these situations. I think a little bit is that I start thinking, why now? Look at the timing. You know, we're just getting over Ukraine a little bit. You know, the sentiment is changing with the support, for Ukraine. I think everybody figured out that it's just, laundering money through Ukraine. And they really don't have much footage, of the Ukraine war and what's really going on over there. They were just feeding a bunch of BS in regard to that, and it's the timing for me. And let's talk about how Hamas, got the weapons that they have now. There's some reports out there saying they look a lot like the weapons that were left behind in Afghanistan. And there's some comments, from Hamas or even Iran, that when they got paid off by the United States, by Biden, I should say, for the exchange of hostages and things like that, is that they were going to use those funds, for this type of effort right here, and Trump did say something to the effect of, that this was going to be happening. So there's a lot of factors behind the doors, the curtain,
That's
you
right.
know. It reminds me of Syria, and it's almost like it's the same tactic that they use. It happened with Gaddafi. Gaddafi was going to switch over to the gold standard, and all of a sudden they had a revolution against him, and he ended up getting murdered and whatnot, and they changed the regime there. And it's kind of like Syria. The same thing was happening, is that they said that they were having a revolution there, but these people rebelling against them weren't even from Syria. And taking it even deeper, a lot of people didn't even realize that in Syria there's a lot of Christian temples there that date hundreds, thousands of years. Even some,
Yeah.
they were getting destroyed. No one was reporting on that. And there's so many agendas behind it, and we really don't even know what the real
There's a lot there.
reasons
Yeah.
are for them.
Well, I mean, I and Danny saw it. I was on this podcast, and they were like, I kind of went on there because she was like, "Oh, I'm anti-Israel right now. I'm really mad because they're attacking and they're, kind of this mass bombing." I can't speak to their military tactics, I said, but I can tell you is this could have and should have been prevented from ever happening. And basically trying to make the argument that, there's certain things that were already positioned to basically make sure that Israel looked like the bad guy, and that was the intention, but and there was just some contradictions. I mean, because the reality is what's it called, the what was I gonna say, the Gaza Strip, that was something that was negotiated for the intention of peace. That was Israel who said, we're going to give this to you. We don't want war. We want peace. We're going to give this to you. Why is it that in 2008, the Palestinians voted, they had an election, right? I think it was under the Bush administration. They voted in Hamas leadership, which is a state, it's on the record, a state terrorist organization.
Yeah.
Under the American, the Americans have them this as state-sponsored terrorists. So, and then Iran has funded them, right? How is it that the $6 billion that just got released, that unfroze it September 11th, Biden did for the negotiation that you mentioned, that all of a sudden now they have the arms, they had these paragliders, and maybe some of that could have been, and they're actually tracking it. I think the Israelis are tracking some of these weapons to see where they came from, and it looks to be some of them are basically American assets. So there's just so much there that it's just not a simple equation. War is always dirty. It has it always has a negative consequence. What is the ultimate goal? What should be the ultimate goal? To prevent it. And if we're really about to prevent it, then we got to have rules that are equal for both sides. Right now, we have two technically nations where one wants fair rules of engagement and the other ones don't. They say that they do, but right now their leadership their leadership, and I'm not speaking to the Palestinian people.
Yeah,
'Cause
there's a difference between Hamas and the Palestinian
yeah,
people,
100%.
and that's where people conflate the two, right? When you start talking about, for
Yeah.
example, and this is yeah, Hamas should pay for what they did to innocent people. I'm talking about the terrorist organization. I'm not talking about Palestinians.
Yeah.
And I think that's where people get it kind of screwed up because
Yep.
they automatically assume you're trying to say, all right, well, just kill all the Palestinians. It's like that's
No,
not even close to what I'm saying.
no.
It's just people did some evil things. Sound like Ilha Omar, and they need to pay.
Yeah. There's got to be a severity that people take them serious, and and the Palestinians are in a tough situation because they have rulers over them that it sounds like they don't want. So there's got to be some way of taking that leadership outside. Ultimately, I think stabilizing it would mean that leadership has to go. But I don't know what that's going to mean, how they're going to do that. Either way, like there's just so much conflating, like you said, and there's also just these sentiments that are like now rising, which anti-Semitism, all of a sudden it rises up again, and all of a sudden they're saying and it's even happening in the U.S. in New York where they're literally okay. I mean, we just heard about 40 children dying and some of them beheaded, and there's some people that are okay with that are yelling that that's okay. I mean, how is there not a contradiction when they're saying you shouldn't be killing innocent Palestinians, but they're okay with babies being decapitated being Israelis? Like that's not okay on both sides. It's never okay. And then they're mentioning that Israel's an apartheid state. My understanding of apartheid is obviously it's segregationist. It's basically separating because of race, like in South Africa and stuff. That's far from the truth when it comes to Israel. 20% of their population is Muslim. They actually have opportunities for Muslims. It's funny because there's Palestinians also in, so there's Arabs, right? 20% basically that are Arab in Israel. And those Arabs don't want to leave Israel. Why? Because they don't want to be under Hamas.
Terrorist rule, yeah.
They want to be under terrorist rule. So it's a little bit of a contradiction. At the end of the day, if we really want to stabilize, I think we have to be in a position where we define the rules and we say this is never okay, and we make sure the public understands this, right? Because there's a lot of media manipulation, I think, that's stoking these fires of anger that could easily, I think, could be at the end of the day, there's a way to unify our country, and which I love. Your premise is we got to take the emotion out of the conversation.
Well, that's exactly what the tactic is that they want to lead, they want to pull at our heartstrings. They want us to make decisions with our emotions. And, the way that we're talking about it, we're actually talking about it with reason, common sense, looking at the deeper issue, looking at the root problem of the situation and not reacting emotionally. And it's not to say that we don't care. Of course we don't. We care. But, let's not fall for the same old tricks.
That's right. I want peace in the region like everybody else. If I think a simple question, and I don't know if you guys had another topic to talk about, but a simple question is let's ask both sides. Which one says I want to have peace, and it's going to require basically that you don't pick a fight with us anymore. Let's see which side says yes to that. I have a feeling for which side's going to say yes and which side's going to say no. It's two big different philosophies, and I'm talking to the leadership of Hamas. One says the other side just shouldn't exist. It's not even about them having a different state. They just shouldn't exist. That's the belief system of these folks. So you got to know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, for sure. Do you see this like going anywhere? Because obviously we've sent some ships there now. Some Americans were killed also. Apparently there could be American hostages. And in other countries as well. I think I saw Poland had some people that they can't find or something like that. Do you think this kind of do they want this to escalate it into something bigger? Like because they always talk about World War. So do you think this is something that the media or whoever is going to try to use to kind of escalate it even further?
Well, I think the way that the Israelis handled it, at least, and I'm not speaking to every specific situation of what they've done, but in general, from what I've seen, is they've tried to do what they can to always try to create an opportunity for peace. And because of the atrocity that happened on the initial attack, and more people are becoming aware of it, is they're becoming aware of just kind of this like barbarism that's happening with families being gunned down with and pictures of that being posted. And these folks are actually all over. They're showing you what they're doing. So they're proud of what they're doing. I think the more people become aware of that, there's going to be more nations that are going to speaking up against Hamas. And I think there's an opportunity for America to take the lead in unifying our nation. As long as we present the truth to the public, I think there's an opportunity to unify and support Israel, and ultimately try to calm that situation in the Middle East. But it all depends on who's talking, right? Who becomes the big voice. I think the Republicans, technically, the division in the House is slowing down the opportunity to solve these issues, because they should be leading on this conversation to make cooler heads, ultimately to create a conversation where cooler heads.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few Republicans though, just kind of, it's what do you call them? The war hungry ones.
Yeah.
And they're there.
Yeah. We need to de-escalate as much as possible. We need to de-escalate. I mean, really, right now the biggest thing we have is prayer.
Yeah, that's right. And to Daniel's point, there's a lot of things going on. So we had Ukraine. It kind of started fizzling out, but even that, started turning into talks about World War III. We've got China and Taiwan. They have some issues going on right now, and obviously what's happening in the Middle East right now. So yeah, I think they are trying to get it to that point where it's a huge distraction. It reminds me of 9/11. I always tell that story is that, there wasn't a whole lot of supporting going into Iraq at that time, and North Korea popped its head out of nowhere threatening the United States, and everybody got pumped up and gung ho into wanting to go to war. And a lot of people forget that, but that's a common pattern.
Yeah.
That happens. So going back to that same old thing, I sound like a broken record sometimes, that we just can't fall for the same old tired, tricks that they try on us.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we need new leadership that's no longer neocon, that doesn't want war, that figures out strategies to stabilize. And I would argue, if we focused on making America great again, if we strengthen our nation, if we become that nation, that city on a hill that Ronald Reagan spoke about, I believe we will be, we at once were considered one of the most benevolent nations. I mean, what other nation gets attacked, goes back and pummels the nation that attacked it, and then rebuilds that nation, right? I'm talking about Japan. When we defeated Japan, we eventually became partners, right? It took a while to build that bridge. So that sentiment of benevolence, of respect and love for other nations, we don't, it's funny if you think about it. There's so many people that hate America, which is kind of peculiar. We're a nation that at our peak of power, we had the most peace in the world, right? We had just taken down the what's it called? With Gorbachev and the wall,
The Berlin Wall?
We've basically had the Berlin Wall torn down. The Cold War ended, right? And this was in a time when everybody was talking about nuclear war. Like, we were in a day where nuclear war was a constant conversation. I still remember in my school that I was hunkering down underneath tables because we were going through these drills of potential, which is the scariest thing, because when you think nuclear war, I mean, I don't think a table is going to really save you. But there was drills that we were doing. In the height of that, America became the strongest, most powerful nation but that's when it was at its greatest, because it had nothing to do with controlling other nations. It had to do with becoming a light of what true freedom was like, that loved its neighbors, that cared about making itself excellent, and really spreading the message that that our nation was founded under God and under the very principles that loved its neighbor, that cared for establishing the rule of law and order. This idea that conversations, that debate and dialogue actually made us better, that actually helped us to advance society. That sentiment became such a popular sentiment that other nations wanted to be like us. And I want to be back there again. So I think when America is great, it's not a power to be feared of unless you attack it, but it's a power, definitely, I think, that you now all of a sudden start to love, right? You want to replicate that. That's what we do. That's where I see us being, if we have the right leadership that restores sanity in our process.
Well, it's that, I think Trump would say it, right? Peace through
Peace
strength.
by strength. Yeah.
Yeah. And, yeah, that's how it was, when Trump was in office, right?
Right.
The people were winning, everyone, jobs, all that. We were doing good. And yeah, there was no wars, no new wars.
Yeah.
And, it's strength, right? The leadership. And it doesn't always have to be Trump either. It could be anyone else. It's just showing that you're not afraid to use your strength, but also, taking care of your people, making sure that your people are winning. And I think that's why a lot of people have problems with, the whole Ukraine thing and all that. It's because we're, the way things are going here right now with inflation and all that, it's like we're not doing good, but we're sending all this money to over here.
Yeah.
And we send all our what do you call it, reserves, right? Whether it's ammo or what's the other one, petroleum. It's like we're depleting ourselves, so we're a weaker nation for trying to help somebody else instead of just helping ourselves.
Well, take a look at this. Isn't it the president of El Salvador that said that, the United States decline could only happen on purpose within? I mean, that's the only way that it would be able to happen this fast. The decline, it's within. And it's something right now that you said, Peter, is that, at that time when America was prosperous, and I don't know why this thought came into my head, is that, we'd going into other nations and helping them and whatnot. And I think through time that got distorted. It somehow they figured out that they could take our money, our tax, what we get taxed, take it to other countries and, let's just call it launder the money and do what they will with it. And at the same time, make us weak. And to your point, Daniel, is, putting America in a decline.
That's right.
And how could we allow that to happen over time? It just got distorted in the name of helping another nation, helping a neighbor.
That's right.
They took advantage of us at the same time, and we allowed it to happen. We had blinders on, and we believed them. And look at what happens.
Yeah. I think you reminded me, there's a scripture in the Bible that says that for that man that does not care for his home, he's worse than an unbeliever. Because if we have no think about it. I grew up kind of in a dysfunctional home. My dad was an alcoholic. My mom was abused by my father. Really bad situation. I knew what instability felt like in my home. I knew what lack of peace and order, just the idea that you can have a family together and enjoy each other and actually love each other. Like that was not, and I'm not saying it was all that bad all the time, but in general, it wasn't a norm in my home. God found me. I came to Christ. Fast forward, I started to slowly learn what a stable home looked like. And I wanted intentionally to build that home, right? Mm-hmm. To slowly be a laborer of that home, to create an environment that was healthy, where I was faithful to my wife. I loved her. I wasn't abusive, where we had a healthy relationship. And when we had our children, they knew that we loved them. We can build a sense of stability around them. We wanted it to infuse some sense of wisdom in them, encourage them and be supportive, and by default create a healthy environment for them to be confident and to grow up and to be productive citizens. There's a lot of co-laboring that happens in creating that environment. That's what I see America what used to be. It was a healthy home where people sensed they belonged, where it was truly the melting pot. We were colorblind society. We did not care, especially after the 60s and the civil rights movement. It's like, no, we can't be focusing on color. If you're a white guy, if you're Asian, you're my brother. We're both Americans. I don't care. We bleed red. It doesn't matter. Like, that was that sense. And we're like, you know what, the idea that if I'm doing well is not good enough unless my neighbor's doing well. We need to make sure that our neighbors are doing good. Because when we have that healthy neighborhood, then we have a stable neighborhood. We have a safe neighborhood, right? People are doing well. They're not drug addicted and abusing alcohol, right? And there's always situations that still it's not perfect. But in general, you have a healthier society. We no longer become we selfish, right? We become all about us and less about caring for our neighbor.
That's 100% right too, because I've been thinking about that. And you read passages in the Bible, and the common theme is no one is perfect.
That's right.
Families are broken.
That's right.
I mean, look at the apostles. I mean, they were the chosen ones, but no one would have chosen them other than Jesus.
That's right. I like that.
And nothing is perfect. And when you say what you say, instead of understanding it, this is what other people would do, is America was never perfect. There was this going on. There was that going on. And my response would be that what I just said is that in the Bible, common theme is families are broken. It's what we do.
Yeah.
And last episode, we talked about the lack of faith, and people falling away from faith. And I just listened to something the other day on an app. It's just kind of going through the Bible, and in that app, it made a lot of sense. Is that we're hungry. We go around hungry spiritually.
That's right.
And there's a void, and we continue to be happy. And on the last episode, we were talking about, we feel that hunger, and we think that this is going to fulfill us. This is going to make our belly full. And it could be idols. It could be, someone else trying to put ideas in our head. But at the end of the day, we end up hungry still.
That's right.
Until we circle back around in what you talked about.
Yep. Yeah. The Beatitudes, Jesus says, those that hunger and thirst for righteousness shall be filled. There's a hunger in all of us to try to do what's right, but how to get there is the hard part, right? Because sometimes
that's the difficult part.
Yeah, we struggle with issues. We find ourselves having a bad day. We're tired. Maybe we had a bad piece of meat or something. I don't know. And all of a sudden we're in a bad attitude. So, but learning to have that like sacrificial mindset, that is the heart of what it means to be an American, that says, yeah, it might be a bad day, but I don't have an excuse. I still have to be a good dad. Or, hey, I'm tired, but I'm going to show up to my son's baseball game. I'm going to be involved in his life. I'm going to let him know how much I love him. And actually, he's probably going to remember that I had a bad day and that I still did what I did. And then he's going to know what it means to sacrifice for others. That's what it meant to me to be an American. That's what it meant to be a Christian and an American. That's what made me proud about my nation. I believe that's where we were, and that's where we can be. But there's got to be more people modeling that. There's got to be more people saying, Lord, it's not about me, it's about you. And I think once we get back to that place, I do believe that emptiness is growing. And because it's growing, I think it's going to get filled. For those that hunger and thirst for it, right? They're going to be filled. And we just got to be ready, right? We got to be there to be ready to encourage them in the right direction.
And then one of the kind of things that last episode was, kind of a sense of like, stop focusing on people's weaknesses because we're flawed, right? We're going to mess up. And instead of focusing on someone's weakness, let's focus on the things that we can strengthen them with, build them up. I think that's one of the problems too, that, people maybe shy away from faith because a lot of people do tend to be judgmental,
Yeah.
right? And I think that at the end of the day, we're, like you said, we're all just trying to be good people, do what we have to do, and get on, get through our lives, trying to be the best examples we can be. Especially for our kids, for the future. That's the main reason we do a lot of the stuff we do today, right?
Yeah.
And then when our kids grow up, kind of like you were saying, right? You grew up, you saw things in your home. I grew up, saw things in my home, and Danny grew up, saw things in his home. And but as you grow, you go, okay, I'm not gonna do that. You learn through your parents, right? And our kids are gonna learn through us too. They're gonna see what we did that was good, and they're gonna see also what we did that maybe wasn't the best. And they'll learn and they'll adapt to that, and that's just the cycle that it goes. But at the end of the day, you want them to be, you yourself and your kids in the future, you want them to be, good people.
Yeah. 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 And it's going to take faith to get there, right? There's another verse you reminded me of. It says, faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. Like, you literally have to have that mindset that says, right now, I have a faith of what I can be, what we can be as a family, and I'm going to take every step to get there. It's going to be a brick by brick, slow building of it. It's going to take a long time. The only thing that's stopping me is my lack of consistency and perseverance, but I want to see it happen. And it's just like a business mindset. Like your long-term perspective, your business plan is, I want my family to be healthy and successful. You're gonna fumble along the way, but as long as you don't quit, you're gonna build on that. And so that's ultimately why I see what it's gonna take. The faith of a nation is the most profound thing. I think we were there. I think the restoration of that faith is starting. It's growing. I know because I'm seeing it at the California GOP. I just saw it. A lot of Judeo-Christian members, and this is, I think we're in very tough times, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for good things to happen. I see hope for our future, but that's going to take us to have faith and ultimately restore our faith in God.
One of the things is that sometimes people think that I'm like this optimist in every situation. And Daniel always, we have conversations, and then I kind of flip it and I go, well, these people standing up, let's say, for example, LGBTQ in schools, the flags, the drag show, reading hour, or whatever the hell they call it. It's obviously it's not good, right? But that optimist in me goes, thank you. Thank you for demonstrating who you really are and what you really want to do. And then for all of those people that had gone away from faith, then they start realizing the importance of it, and it actually brings them back to that.
That's right.
So, thank you to them, for, putting it out in our face and waking us up.
That's right.
And, people that didn't even realize that they were asleep, they're actually, whoa, I didn't realize that I was allowing this to happen by being asleep. So, there's a lot of good things happening. I agree with you 1,000%. And people, I think the tide is turning. My biggest fear is going back to sleep. The people going back to sleep and not realizing what's happening in front of us.
I don't see that happening personally, Daniel, because you have too many things shaking right now. People are looking for shelter, and right now faith is the only shelter that they really have. So like you said, I don't like these problems. Technically, this kind of this morally relative moderate society. It's like you do your YOLO, right? You only live once. You live your life, I live mine. You live your truth, I live mine, right? As if truth kind of lives in bubbles in different people's lives.
That's your reality. This is my reality. This is my truth. That's my truth. Yeah.
My kids used to tell me that. I learned a lot from my kids, and I as I've gotten older, I've definitely tried to learn to listen more than I say to them. But I used to just tell them, like, well, basically, you can walk off of a cliff because you disagree with gravity, but you'll find out whether whether gravity exists or not, right? Whether you disobey the laws of gravity by doing. I'm just so I'm just telling. It's like life has a way of teaching you things. You could either listen to the truth, or you can violate the truth. It's your choice, but there is a consequence either way, a benefit or a consequence, a negative consequence.
Yeah,
And that's where
it's kind of like what I used to tell my kids. They came out with the YOLO thing, and I said, YOLO, it's like you only die once too. So,
right.
which one is it going to be?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's perspectives.
Uh-huh.
We talk about being the biggest influence in our kids' lives. Someone asked me a long time ago. The kids were little, and growing up, they've always been really polite, excuse me, thank you, and things of that nature. And someone came up to us and said, oh my gosh, your kid said excuse me. And what is it that you're doing? And we started having a conversation, and it's the response was like understanding that we're the biggest influence in their life.
100%.
And when you realize that, you understand the magnitude of what your responsibility is. So am I gonna leave my kids at school and let them be the biggest influence in their life? Am I going to let their friends be the biggest influence in their life?
Right.
Am I going to let popular culture, the TV, the music be the biggest influence in their life? To me, it was a no. I'm not. I'm going to be their biggest influence in their life.
Yeah, I used to tell my kids, question everything, even question your dad. If there's something you see me that you're not sure about, you ask me. But at the end of the day, you got to be and I've told all my kids this. You got to be the biggest influencer in that room, because you're either the influencer or you're the influenced, right? Someone's going to impact you by directing your moral compass. And you might find yourself to being an accomplice to a crime and not even realize it. So you gotta have your wits about you, and you got to make sure you're the one that's driving that conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think obviously with your campaign and all that, I think that's especially nowadays, a good thing to focus on is letting parents know that they're the ones that should have the power,
100%.
and not these schools, not these unions, not the government. And I'm sure that's on your list, but you know what I mean? I think that's right now, that's a winning message.
Yeah. I mean, there's been talks about a constitutional amendment to add parents' rights into that equation. I don't know how exactly that's going to play out, but there definitely is a very strong sentiment. And this is why I think, like Daniel said earlier, that there's a lot of things happening that are shifting the sentiments of folks. I'm seeing definitely that parents' right conversation officially creating the biggest bipartisan support system. Now you have Democrats, no party preference voters, Republicans, all unifying under one idea that parents need to have the ultimate authority when it comes to education, choice of sex, and all these kind of education things. Like, the parents need to be the ones that drive that, and it's a healthy thing. This is why I think our nation is set up for greatness, because that the more the Dems push to take away rights or change perspectives and try to create narratives, the more the people press into the issue and say, what did you just say? Like, I think I heard you mean that I have the authority, right? That's what you're saying. If that's not what you're saying, then I'm going to listen a little bit more, because I'm going to try to find out where you're trying to gaslight me. Because this is, there's no way that it's like, it becomes very personal, that conversation. So the truth always has weight. You can use it, or you can use it to your benefit. And I think the Dems are imploding because of their abuse of it, personally.
Yep.
100%. Hey, just in regard to your content that you've been having in IG, and the conversations that you've been having, I just want to tell you that I like it. You're shining a light on who you really are, and I don't think candidates really do that. I'll just talk about the one where you shared your business.
Oh yeah, thank you for watching that.
Yeah, it's engaging. You're not just talking talking points and things like that, and way different from what I've seen in the past, where they go against the opposition, sideways, and they
Mm.
basically focus on the opposition and not on themselves and what they bring of value.
Mhm.
And I just wanted to let you know that um, I like it a lot, and I'm sure that I have a feeling that other people really like it, and I hope that you're getting a lot of support,
Mhm.
when you post those.
Yeah, I do. There's people that like it and share it, and yeah, I mean it's kind of off the cuff, but I just had this idea when I was like, wow, my cost of sugar just doubled in price. I was in my shop and I'm like, I'll do a quick Instagram live about it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just about the cost of sugar. It was like, look, I'm living the things that I'm trying to not only understand but articulate to you
Okay.
guys. You guys understand. Like I live in this real world where the pain that you're feeling, I'm feeling right as a business owner, and I'm trying to troubleshoot how to still overcome them, which means I'm by default troubleshooting how to create policies that's going to create opportunity for folks that I care about, which is the average everyday voter, right? Because that's what I am. That's what I live.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's,
So
it's funny you say that because that's what we've been telling people these past few episodes is vote your reality.
yeah.
Hmm.
That's
So,
it. Yeah. So I feel like people don't even realize how I connect with them, but once I share a little bit, then they're like, oh yeah, he's just like me. I'm just the average guy, just like him, and just trying to do what I can to take care of my family and pay the bills and have a decent life and yeah, try to guide my children in the right way.
yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's
great.
100% true. And and I think that's needed more. I agree with Danny because I think I told you this, Peter. I was like, we have a candidate down here. He's been getting endorsed by GOP like the past three, ele- excuse me, the past three election cycles. I can't find his stance on any issue. You know,
Really?
and I've messaged him or I've commented, hey, like, where can I find your stances? No responses. So it's like, all right.
Wow.
And then I forget who posted. I followed someone that posted an endorsement of him, and then I commented on there, like, well, where can I find his stances? And the response I got was like, to me, it was ridiculous. It's like, I think the response was, and I'm almost gonna quote it, I think word for word. If he had zero stances, he'd be better than Costa. And
Oh
it's like,
wow.
well, no, that's now you're just telling me you're only endorsing this guy because he's a Republican and that's it, not because you know what he's running on. So I
Yeah.
think what you're doing, I 100% agree with that. What Danny said is it gives you insight into the person, like who am I giving my vote to, right? Who am I choosing to represent me? Because then it's like, all right, this person, you know, you're going through the same things I'm going through, right?
That's
And you know that you're feeling what I'm feeling right now. So
right.
the struggles I'm going through because you're going through your own. And I see that, And then with some of these other people, it's like I don't see it. I
Yeah.
don't see it, but you're
Yeah.
there.
Danny visited me at my shop and just kind of came to check out the business. So he got to see me in action a bit with my apron and everything. That's what I did. I did the live after that. But
Yeah, it was after that.
Oh,
but but you bring up a really good point, Danny, is you know, the bottom line is I don't want to be elected because I'm a Republican. I
Mhm.
want to be elected because of my value system as a Republican. Well, ultimately, the things that I believe in, that has more to do about what's going to give me an opportunity to be able to create solutions or policies that might open the door solutions. Really, I mean, just like I've lived as a policymaker, I've also lived as a businessman, and I've really learned that your best gauge of success is not you. It's the outcomes and the people that you impact. As a business owner, when I impact my consumer in a way that they enjoy what I'm providing them, they will buy more from me. If I suck at it, then I need to figure out what I'm doing wrong so I can figure out how to get better. Same thing with becoming a policymaker. But you're not going to get that mindset, how to excel, how to become a more excellent candidate, if all we care about is, hey, we just need the Republican in the room to get elected. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying you shouldn't vote for the Republican. Obviously, you got to lean into that to see, but I just know that, well, let's put it this way. When I was dealing with the lockdowns and the mandates, there was Republicans in on the dais that I was going toe to toe with over some of these rights issues that we were dealing with. that I completely disagreed with them. So, it really begs the question, if you're a Republican, what does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Why believe in you? Why believe in what you believe in? Again, it's less about voting for the party mindset and more about the values and what you bring to the table that's actually going to solve problems. And I think that's where there's a little bit of a convoluted, like, I'm not sure about this person sentiment out from the public. And that's where I think things need to change. Like, I don't want to be voted in just because I'm a Republican.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that. I want to be voted in because I have the better value system, the better solutions, the opportunity to actually represent, that actually cares, right? I think a big part of it is character, making sure that the heart of that person is in the right place, because you can have a very smart, articulate, and ultimately, very well supported candidate that goes in and ultimately abuses the system, right? And that's what we don't want. And so, and I think that's where the party system is really falling apart on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. Well, we'll see. We'll see what if I'm able to get any info on this guy before November 2024.
Well, and then we come final point, suck at figuring out how to get better, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get better unless you, like, as a business owner, you try things out, you create okay, this worked out, this was good, I see the revenue coming in, it's actually benefiting, the consumers are loving it, they're giving me feedback. How do you get better until you build on a foundation, and then you see what works and what doesn't, and you constantly build on that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that as a party, so now specifically to the party issue, where do we create an opportunity for the public to say, this is why I believe in being a Republican, and this is why this is the right party, and this is why I'm going to vote this way, and this is why I'm going to do more homework on making sure that I hold them accountable so that they become better than they currently are. Like, how do you create a more excellent party unless you challenge them to do better and hold them accountable? And I think that's what's missing in the party system. It's less about accountability and more like, hey, let's just work together and go along to get along and ultimately vote each other in. And, we're the ones in power. And then all of a sudden we're voting in debt and destroying our country. That's not the way it should work.
And the other point to that is what you said right now, is that if they're just doing that, so they're just not being elected, they're just, in other words, being selected, into the party, and they're not people like you, everyday people that have a business or living real lives. There's I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're never gonna have real solutions.
Right.
And that, I know that's the point that you're trying to make, but I think what people don't understand is that these people don't know how to run a business, and we expect them to run our lives, a community, counties, any way that you want to break it down. We're giving them the authority to do that, but they don't even know what it's like to run a business. They don't know how difficult it is to run a business. I heard something a little while ago. It was about a congressman. He was a Democrat in the 70s, and he retired, and he wanted to open up a bed and breakfast, right? So he got a whole team. He got everything set up. He opened up the business, and it failed. And one of the things that he said is that, well, I didn't realize that a lot of the policies that we were creating and regulations actually affected for my business to be successful.
That's right.
And it's until then that they have that aha moment, is that I held myself back from being successful in a business.
That's
and
right.
I guess that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that isn't that crazy?
It is. Well, it's funny because you reminded me of the article that I wrote where it's copy and paste what I said to the public health officer, in that I mentioned, why don't you listen to the real policymakers, which are the businesses, to inform. I said to inform your discretion on how to pivot from the current model, right? Because at that point, with the 2 weeks to slow the spread, we need to stop the spread of the virus, or we need to keep people 6 feet apart, yada, yada, yada. So I said, well, why don't you lean into them and hear what they have to say of what they're currently doing? How can they change their ways? They know their business in and out. They can figure out how to have successful practices still in the midst of dealing with the virus and trying to prevent spread. Like, why don't we listen to them instead of tell them, oh, by the way, you're non-essential, we're going to shut you down. Like, that's where I literally leaned into that, because I'm like, wait. And I mean, being a business owner, you learn really quick. I'm like, I'm writing policies on breaks. I'm writing policies on, how to open up my shop and close my shop. Ultimately, we got to train our staff that how to treat each other with respect, customer service, right? How to manage the money, like the ethics, so there's all these policies that we're creating, and we're constantly like, hey, by the way, this is our policy on this and on that. Why? Because we're vetting it through. We're testing it. We're seeing it happen. We're seeing where it's not working, where it is working. And we're starting to get better and better and leaning towards kind of becoming more efficient business, more profitable business. And the customers ultimately guide that conversation. They guide what is going to work and what's not. That's what policy making is. The customer is the voter. We listen to them. They will guide us. We will become a healthy country because we're listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line.
Cool. Well, Peter, that was a good conversation. Thank you for your time. I put your website up here, hernandezforcongress.com. That way people can check it out. Hopefully they can donate to your campaign and, get things rolling for next year.
What about that fundraiser that you're having?
Oh, thank you for reminding me. God bless you guys. So this Saturday, if you go on my website, sign up to basically it's $100 per ticket. Show up, we'll feed you. We'll have our local restaurant feed. We have food we're providing, wine. We'll have music. So it's going to be a fun night. Silent auction. We're going to have, I'll have 49er football we're auctioning off. It has all the greats, or I think a majority of them, Jerry Rice, Steve Young, things like that. We also have some local goods from Bertuccio Farms, which, so some local wares and stuff, and that we're going to be basically auctioning off. So it'll be a fun night, a good night, and under the stars, a beautiful ranch in basically rural California, rural Hollister. It's going to be a really good time. It looks like right now we have a really good group of folks coming from all across the region. I actually have folks from LA coming, from Fresno, from San Jose coming. So yeah, we'd love to have, any of your listeners to sign up and be there.
Yeah. So yeah, right here, the fundraiser information is right on the homepage. So you can see it. Just scroll down a little, and you get to see where Peter stands on the issues, all that good stuff. So hit up his website.
And show up in person and shake my hand and ask me questions, all the tough questions. I'll be there.
Yep. Yeah. Sounds good, man. Well, thank you again for coming on. And, we look forward to this next year and how everything plays out. We're here. I know you're going to be here. So, whatever you need, we're here, man. We're here to support.
Appreciate you guys. God bless you guys. Yeah. Latino Free Minds. Let's do it. Let's win back this state and our country.
For sure. All right, then, everybody.
Thank you, Peter.
Take care.
All right. Have a good night. God bless you guys.
God bless.